Hi everyone, today we'll be talking about the topic of complaining when we like or dislike something. So to begin with, we're going to go through two concepts of arguing versus complaining. Usually what we do when we do not like something is we start to argue about it rather than complain about it. So the difference is very small and subtle because when we argue, we usually think about arguing on a high tone or just using something that would insult the other person. Whereas complaining is a more subtle and more kind of untypical way for us to talk about something that we do not like. So arguing versus complaining. Complaining is in fact what? So complaints are expressions of displeasure or annoyance in response to an action that is seen by the speaker as unfavorable. So this might sound a bit complex, but in fact, it is something that we usually do in everyday life. So for example, suppose you want to complain about the pizza you have just ordered because it's too salty, and what would be the expression needed to express this discontentment with something or respond to a complaint? So usually you would say something like, I have a complaint to make, your pizza is just too salty. Or I'm sorry to say this, but your food is inedible, as you can see in the slide. Next off, what happens if we want to, so we said what is a complaint. So what happens if we want to, let's say, complain to someone in specific? So if we want to complain to a teacher, we would use different tone. If we want to complain in a restaurant, we would use different types of language that we're going to talk about later in the presentation. What do people say to express a complaint in your first language, though? How does it differ from what we say in English? So here you would have to think about how we do this in Macedonian. In Macedonian, typically, we have a very argumentative tone, let's say. So in Macedonian, we would kind of swear even a little bit. We would possibly be very much mad about something that has happened. So we would use something like prestani, podaj mi nešto, lele zašto ga napravi тоа. And it kind of sounds unprofessional. So it would go into the lines of arguing rather than complaining about something. It's not that English is that much polite if you use it in a general sense like we do in Macedonian, but there are constructions that we can learn in order to be polite when we argue or complain about something. So is it common to complain about bad service in Macedonia? Typically, I would say no. Because in my opinion, every time we go somewhere, we just tend to forget to say something, or we would be too shy to say something is not right. But in England, in United Kingdom in general, or in the United States or Australia, we kind of have this cultural sense that they do complain a bit more than us, which might just be a cultural difference, might just be something that we think about or have a stereotype from movies. But I do think that we should work on it in Macedonian as well. It's always nice to know how to be polite when you ask about something. Is it common to complain to your parents, your boss, or a teacher? If you go down the line to teachers, then definitely it is very, very often that children and students complain to their teachers. However, here you have to be very specific about what you're complaining. You need to have some sort of ground for your complaint, or you need to be very polite and talk to your teacher first before you start arguing and complaining. Would you complain differently to a friend, a server, or a teacher? So you would, I think, complain differently, and you need to be aware who you're talking to. So it's very important whenever you have speaking or whenever we have some sort of a debate to know who you're talking to. Because if you talk to your students, you will talk in a different manner. If you talk to supervisor or the principal, there are a couple of things that you need to pay attention to. When you talk to your friends, you can be informal and pay less attention to the actual language you would use. So I talked a bit about the expressions you might want to use when you talk about complaining. So some of them are, I have a complaint to make. So here you would say, sorry, I have a complaint to make about maybe the price being a bit too high from what is offered. Or sorry to bother you, but here you're also very much polite to the person you're talking to, because you're taking up some part of their time maybe. So you are sorry to bother them in their time. Then I'm sorry to say this, but usually we would use this when everything is going smoothly, but you have this small thing that actually annoys you a lot. So you would say, sorry to say, but this little thing annoys me. Then I'm afraid I've got a complaint about. This is a bit more formal. So here you might use this also in a written form if you want to say that something is of greater proportion and you want to make a complaint about refund of money, let's say. I'm afraid there is a slight problem with. So this, again, connected to the previous one, a bit more formal. Then we have excuse me, but there is a problem about. Here you would possibly use this, let's say, in a classroom setting where you have some sort of issue with an exercise you're making. So you're going to raise your hand and you're going to say to the professor or the teacher, excuse me, but there is a problem about this and this and this. Then I want to complain about, very plain and simple. And then I'm angry about, and this might be used in a more progressive way and when you're really, really mad about something. Now, in your books, you have a text to read about the complaining, and then you need to insert the following words in the correct blank. So the words are after, then, finally, or at first. And I have a picture scanned from the book, or if you don't have the book with you. So it's basically a conversation with IT support with someone from the company, and they're complaining about the usage of their computer. So it says, we asked readers to tell us about a time when they tried to help someone, and here's one story from Graham Smith. So basically this is kind of an excerpt from a newspaper, possibly. And it goes as follows. I used to work in IT for a big company, but I was fired because I got angry with the manager. Here's what happened. I answered the phone one day and said, "Hi, can I help you?" A voice said, "Hi, I'm a manager in the sales department and I've got an IT program. I need your help." "What's the problem?" I asked, and he told me his computer screen had suddenly gone black. So here you have a blank. Read through it and then we're going to come back to it. I couldn't think of why it would have happened. I asked him to check that the screen was still connected. He said it was. Blank. I asked him if he'd pressed any buttons by mistake. He said no, the computer was installing a program when suddenly it went poof. Blank. A few seconds. I said, okay, please check that your computer is still plugged into the wall. Sometimes it gets disconnected accidentally. The manager asked me to wait a minute, then he came back and said, I can't see behind my desk where the plug is. It's very dark. So I told him to turn on the light. Do you know what he said to me? Oh, I can't turn on the light because the electricity went out 5 minutes ago. I tried to keep quiet. Blank. I had to say something. I warned him never to call me again, ever. He complained to my boss and I was fired. How fair is that, do you think? So here you might want to stop for a minute and just add the words in the blanks. Okay, so that complaint actually should have been a very formal one, and it is something that might happen in a workplace. Now, this instruction and this type of exercise that is to follow is what would happen in a school, let's say. So the instructions say your friend goes to complain to his English teacher about his grade, but the teacher gets upset with him. So look at what your friend said below, and how would you change the complaint, or what would you have done differently? Just think about it as I read through the exercise. The student says, I want to talk to you about my grade. The teacher, okay, what seems to be the problem? The student, it's not fair. Everyone in the class got an A except for me. It's not fair. You gave me a low grade. Is there something wrong with me? Why do you hate me? And then the teacher answers, I'm not treating you unfairly. You do not attend my class regularly and you didn't do well on the last test. That's why your grade is so low. The student answers, I have an American friend and he always helps me, so I'm 100% sure that my answers are correct. So don't tell me they're wrong or something because I'm sure. Teacher, I'm sorry, but we went over the answers to the test in the class. Your answers were not correct. If you want, we can go over the answers again and I can explain them to you. And the student finally answers, no, I don't want to go over the test. I'm going to go to the office and complain about you. I'll wait till tomorrow. If nothing changes, I'm going to go to the office and complain. I don't want to do that, but... So I asked you to think as I read as to what you would do differently. In my opinion, I would say that the student is a bit too harsh in the way that they are actually using the language. And the teacher is trying to be as polite as possible. So you do not just go and complain without having the grounds for it. Now, this exercise is actually part of your homework, sort of. So if you would like to stop the video and just go through the instructions and the situations and think about them, that would be awesome. And never forget, don't be a Karen. Think about complaining and think before complaining to someone about what you're about to say, and just do not insult people. There's always a way and there are always words that you can use in order to be nice and polite. Thank you.